Montana Territory, 1878. The Sweetgrass Hills stood like sentinels against the evening sky as Penelope Blackburn hurried from the mercantile, clutching her parcels to her chest. At 20 years old, with honey-blonde hair cascading in loose waves down her back and a simple blue calico dress that had seen better days, she kept her gaze downcast. 3 years in the frontier town of Willow Creek had taught her that drawing attention only invited trouble. Better invisible than noticed, she whispered to herself, a mantra learned through hard experience. Life on the frontier had stripped Penelope of the optimism she'd carried west from Boston. Her father's death from fever just months after their arrival had left her alone, struggling to maintain their small homestead while fending off both creditors and unwanted suitors. The townsfolk saw her as either pitiable or available, never capable, never worthy of genuine respect. What she wanted was simple: survival, keep the homestead, honor her father's dream, and somehow endure the isolation that came with being a woman alone in the West. What she needed, connection, belonging, someone to see beyond her circumstances, seemed as distant as the Eastern civilization she'd left behind. As she rounded the corner toward the livery where her wagon waited, Penelope collided with a solid form. Her parcels scattered across the muddy street. "My apologies, miss." The voice was deep but gentle. Penelope looked up to meet the clearest blue eyes she'd ever seen. They belonged to a young cowboy, perhaps 25, with wheat-colored hair and a face that was handsome without being pretty. The stubble on his jaw was light, his skin bronzed from outdoor work rather than the leathery texture of older ranchers. "No harm done," she managed, dropping to her knees to retrieve her spilled goods. "Allow me." He crouched beside her, gathering packages with surprising care for hands so obviously accustomed to rougher work. His movements were efficient, athletic. "Name's Adam Eastwood. Just signed on with the Circle T." "Penelope Blackburn." She hesitated. "My father's homestead is northeast of town." "You're Jeremiah Blackburn's daughter? Heard he had a fine eye for horseflesh." He handed her the last package. "Also heard his daughter was keeping the place running single-handed." "That takes grit." Something fluttered in Penelope's chest, not just at his unexpected knowledge of her situation, but at the respect in his voice when he mentioned her efforts. No one in Willow Creek ever acknowledged her work as anything but desperate flailing against inevitable failure. "Some would call it foolishness," she replied, standing and brushing mud from her skirts. "But thank you, Mr. Eastwood." "Adam," he corrected with a smile that transformed his face. "And I've never found determination foolish." As they parted ways, Penelope couldn't shake the odd feeling that something fundamental had shifted in her carefully ordered world. 2 weeks later, Penelope struggled with a broken wagon wheel miles from town. The spring rain had turned to merciless summer heat, and sweat plastered strands of honey-blonde hair to her forehead as she tried unsuccessfully to leverage the wagon high enough to remove the damaged wheel. "Need a hand, Miss Blackburn?" Adam Eastwood rode toward her on a chestnut gelding, his presence both surprising and, though she'd never admit it, welcome. "The axle's fine, but the wheel gave out." She straightened, embarrassed by her dishevelment, but too practical to indulge the feeling. "I can manage." "No doubt you can," he said, dismounting with easy grace. But 4 hands work faster than 2. Working together, they soon had the spare wheel secured. Adam wiped his brow, studying her homestead visible in the distance. "Your father picked good land. The creek running through makes it prime. That's why Harland keeps offering to buy it," Penelope said before she could stop herself. "Jasper Harland?" Adam's expression darkened. "Man owns half the county already, and wants the rest." Penelope sighed. "Each offer comes with less money and more threats. But this land was my father's dream. I can't just abandon it because it's difficult." Adam regarded her thoughtfully. "Most folks in town say you're fighting a losing battle." "Most folks in town are waiting for me to fail." The bitterness in her voice surprised even her. "They see a woman alone and assume I'm helpless, or worse, that I should be grateful for any man willing to take me and my troubles off their hands." "And what do you see when you look at your situation?" Adam asked quietly. The question caught her off guard. No one had asked her perspective before. "I see possibilities." Penelope gestured toward her land. "My father taught me everything he knew about farming and horses. The soil's good. With proper irrigation, we could double the yield. The wild horses in the North Valley could be gentled and sold. There's a future here if I can just hold on long enough. Adam nodded, something like admiration warming his eyes. Sounds like you've got more vision than half the territory put together. For the first time in years, Penelope felt seen, not as a pitiable female or a burden, but as a person with legitimate dreams and the capacity to achieve them. Through the scorching summer weeks, Adam found reasons to ride past Penelope's homestead. A straying calf, news from town, questions about local water sources that any ranch hand at the Circle T could have answered. Each visit left Penelope looking forward to the next, though she guarded this growing anticipation carefully. During one such visit, they sat on her porch as the August sun sank behind the hills. Adam had helped her mend fence posts all afternoon without being asked. "Why do you keep coming around, Mr. Eastwood?" she finally asked, passing him a cup of coffee. "Adam," he corrected as always. "And I come because I want to. There must be livelier company in town. Livelier, maybe, but not better." He looked at her directly. "You're different, Penelope. Most women who've been out here get hard or bitter. You've got strength without losing softness." She laughed, the sound unfamiliar to her own ears. "I think you're seeing what you want to see. There's nothing remarkable about me. That right there proves you wrong." Adam set down his coffee. Any other woman would know her own worth. "Worth is determined by others," Penelope said quietly. "And I've been found wanting by most standards out here. Too educated for cowboys, too poor for merchants' sons, too independent for men looking for a docile wife, too practical for romantics. Maybe you've been measured by the wrong standards." Adam's voice was gentle. "Or by the wrong men." The moment hung between them, fragile and charged with possibility. Then a rider appeared on the horizon, galloping hard toward the homestead. Adam was on his feet instantly, hand dropping to his holster. But Penelope recognized the horse. "It's Sam Tucker, from town," she said, standing. Tucker reined in, his horse lathered. "Miss Blackburn, fire at the McClintock place is spreading fast. Wind's pushing it this way. Everyone's gathering to fight it before it takes half the county." The wildfire raged for 3 days, devouring dry grass and timber with insatiable hunger. Penelope fought alongside the men, her blonde hair tied back and her face blackened with soot as she worked the bucket line and helped dig fire breaks. Several times she noticed Adam watching her with undisguised concern when the flames leapt too close, but he never suggested she retreat to safety with the other women. On the 4th morning, exhausted but victorious, the community gathered in Willow Creek's church to account for losses. The McClintock homestead was gone, along with 2 others. Cattle had scattered for miles. But miraculously, no lives had been lost. "The Blackburn place?" someone asked. "Saved," came the reply. "That firebreak the Eastwood boy insisted on digging along the north ridge turned the flames." Penelope looked across the crowded room to where Adam leaned against the wall. When their eyes met, he simply nodded once. She realized with sudden clarity that he'd spent those 3 days positioning himself between her property and the advancing fire, fighting hardest where her stake was highest. That night, she found him sitting alone outside the makeshift camp where those who'd lost homes were being sheltered. "Thank you," she said simply, sitting beside him. "You saved my land. We all did." His modesty was genuine. "Besides, that land matters. What you're building there matters. Most men would say a woman has no business trying to run a homestead alone. I'm not most men." There was something in his voice, a rough edge of emotion, that made her look at him more closely. In the firelight, she could see lines of fatigue etched around his eyes, but also resolve. "No," she said softly. "You're not." Later, walking back toward the church where the women were sleeping, Adam spoke carefully. "I've taken a job breaking horses for the army at Fort Benton. Good money, but I'll be gone a month or more." Penelope felt a hollow sensation in her chest, but kept her voice steady. "That's a fine opportunity. When I return." He hesitated. "Would you allow me to call on you properly?" The question, so formal, so respectful, caught her by surprise. "Call on me. Court you," he clarified, his gaze direct. "With honorable intentions." Something warm bloomed in Penelope's chest. "People will talk. They'll say I'm desperate or that you're settling." "People always talk," Adam replied. "Question is whether we let them decide what's possible for us." Standing in the starlight, Penelope felt the weight of 3 years' loneliness pressing against a new, fragile hope. Yes, she said finally. When you return, you may call on me. His smile was worth every whisper she knew would follow. During Adam's absence, Penelope threw herself into preparing for winter with renewed purpose. Each task completed was a private victory. Each improvement to the homestead a statement of faith in a future suddenly less solitary. When neighbors commented on her improved spirits, she offered non-committal responses, guarding her tender hopes. October winds were stripping leaves from the trees when Jasper Harland arrived at her door, his cold eyes assessing the repaired barn roof and freshly painted fences. "Place is looking better, Miss Blackburn," he said, removing his hat with false courtesy. "My offer still stands, though I'm thinking the price needs adjusting considering the improvements." "The price needs adjusting because the land is worth more than you've offered, Mr. Harland," Penelope replied evenly. "But it's not for sale at any price." Harland's smile didn't reach his eyes. "Heard you've been entertaining Adam Eastwood. Boy's got sand, I'll give him that. But he's got no roots here, no real stake in this territory. My personal associations aren't your concern. Everything in this valley is my concern." Harland's tone hardened, especially when it involves a drifter with a past he doesn't talk about. "Ever ask your cowboy where he came from? What brought him west?" The question stung because Penelope realized she hadn't. Adam had become such a natural part of her world that she'd never pressed for details about his life before Montana. "Did you know," Harland continued, watching her face, "that your father owed me money when he died? Quite a sum, actually. I've been patient out of respect for his memory, but patience has limits. My father left no debts," Penelope said firmly, though unease fluttered in her stomach. "His affairs were in order." "Were they?" Harland replaced his hat. "Might want to check those papers of his again. And ask your cowboy about Missouri while you're at it." After he rode away, Penelope spent hours searching through her father's documents, finding nothing to support Harland's claim. But his words about Adam lingered, planting seeds of doubt she couldn't quite dismiss. 2 days later, Adam returned, riding up to her homestead as the first snow dusted the distant mountains. The month away had hardened him somehow, his face leaner, his eyes more watchful. But when he smiled at her, Penelope felt her doubts recede. "You've been busy," he said, looking around at the improvements. "Winter waits for no one." She hesitated. Harland came by. Something flickered across Adam's face. "What did he want?" "What he always wants, my land." She studied him carefully. "He also mentioned Missouri." Adam went still. "Did he now? He implied you have secrets." Penelope kept her voice steady. "Things you've been hiding." For a long moment, Adam said nothing, just stared at the distant mountains. Then he dismounted, moving with the fluid grace that had first caught her attention. "Can we talk inside?" By the fireplace in her small cabin, Adam confirmed what Harland had insinuated. He had indeed come from Missouri, where he'd worked on his uncle's farm until a dispute with a powerful neighbor turned violent. "He tried to force my cousin into marriage," Adam explained, his voice tight. "When I intervened, his men came for me. There was a fight. One of them died, not by my hand, but they claimed otherwise." "So you ran." Penelope's voice was carefully neutral. "I left," he corrected. "There's a difference. I'm not wanted by the law, Penelope. I've checked. But that family has connections, and staying meant endangering everyone I cared about. Why didn't you tell me this before?" "Because the past has a way of tainting the present." Adam looked at her directly. "I wanted you to know me as I am now, not through the lens of what happened there." "And what are you now, Adam?" "A man trying to build something honest." His eyes held hers. "A man who sees something in you worth fighting for." The simplicity of his answer touched something deep within her. "Harland also claimed my father owed him money." "Do you believe him?" "No. But that doesn't mean he can't make trouble." Penelope sighed. "My father always said a claim is only as good as the paper that proves it and the gun that defends it." "Wise man, your father." Adam reached for her hand, his touch tentative. "Whatever Harland tries, we'll face it together, if that's what you want." In that moment, Penelope recognized that she'd begun thinking of her future in terms of we rather than I, a quiet transformation as significant as any deed or claim. "It is," she said softly. "It is what I want." The winter of 1878 proved one of the harshest in memory. Blizzards isolated homesteads for weeks at a time, and wolves grew bold with hunger. Adam had taken lodging in town, but rode out to Penelope's homestead whenever weather permitted, bringing supplies and news. During one such visit in January, they found themselves trapped by a sudden storm, forced to weather 3 days alone in her cabin. The propriety-minded women of Willow Creek would have been scandalized, but survival trumped social niceties on the frontier. On the second night, as wind howled around the cabin's sturdy walls, Adam stoked the fire while Penelope prepared a simple meal from their stores. "We'll need to check the livestock at first light," she said, "if the snow lets up." "Already planning to." Adam straightened, watching her move about the small kitchen area. "You know, most women would be fretting about their reputation right now." Penelope smiled wryly. "My reputation was compromised the moment I decided to run this place alone. Besides, between freezing to death and causing gossip, I'll choose gossip. Practical as always." Adam laughed, then grew serious. "Though I'd marry you tomorrow if you'd have me, storm or no storm." The casual proposal hung in the air between them. Penelope stilled, a tin cup frozen halfway to the shelf. "That's not how I imagined being asked," she said finally. Adam moved to her, gently taking the cup and setting it aside. "How did you imagine it?" "I didn't." Her honesty was automatic. "After Father died, I stopped allowing myself such luxuries." "Penelope." Adam took her hands, his calloused fingers warm against hers. "I'm not offering marriage as a solution to your problems or protection for your reputation. I'm offering because I love you. Because I see in you everything I want in a partner for whatever life brings." Tears pricked her eyes, not from the sentiment, but from the simple recognition in his words. He saw her, truly saw her, as she'd always hoped to be seen. "This land would still be mine," she said, needing to be clear. "I won't give up what my father built. I'd never ask you to." Adam's eyes held her steadily. "This is your home. I'm just asking if there might be room in it for me too." The tenderness of his request undid her final reservations. "Yes," she whispered. "There's room." When the storm cleared, they rode into town together, announcing their engagement to a mixture of surprise, congratulations, and poorly concealed speculation. Harland, drinking in the saloon when they broke the news, merely raised his glass in a mock toast that felt more like a warning. February brought a brief thaw, and with it, trouble. Penelope awoke one morning to find her fence cut in 3 places and cattle missing. The tracks led toward Harlan land, but without witnesses, there was little she could do. "He's testing us," Adam said, surveying the damage. "Seeing how we'll respond." "Then we'll show him," Penelope replied. "We'll rebuild stronger than before." But the incidents continued. A storage shed mysteriously burned, a well fouled, more livestock disappearing. Each attack more brazen than the last, yet always just careful enough to avoid direct confrontation or proof. In March, as they prepared for their April wedding, Adam returned from town with grave news. "Harlan's filed a claim against your property. Says he has a promissory note from your father pledging the land as collateral for a loan." "That's impossible," Penelope said. "Show me." The document Adam reluctantly produced looked authentic. Her father's signature at the bottom of a loan agreement for a sum that would have been impossible for him to repay. But something about it struck her as wrong. "This is dated 2 weeks before Father died," she said slowly. "But he was bedridden by then, too weak to hold a pen." She looked up at Adam, certainty growing. "This is a forgery. Can you prove it?" "I have letters he wrote earlier when he was already failing." "The handwriting is different." Hope flared briefly before reality dampened it. "But will that be enough for a judge? Harlan has influence." "We'll fight it," Adam promised. "Together." But as April approached, Penelope felt the walls closing in. The territorial judge was days away, coming to settle several property disputes, including hers. The night before his arrival, she sat on her porch, watching the sunset paint the mountains gold. "What if we lose?" she asked when Adam joined her. "This land is everything to me." "No," he said quietly. "It's not everything. It's important, worth fighting for, but it's not everything." "How can you say that?" Anger flared unexpectedly. "You don't understand what it means to me." "I understand perfectly." Adam's voice remained gentle. "This land represents your father's dream, your independence, everything you've fought to preserve." "But Penelope, even if the worst happens, even if Harlan wins, you won't lose what truly matters." "And what's that?" "Your strength, your determination, the person you've become." He took her hand. "Those are things no one can take from you. Not Harlan, not anyone." Tears filled her eyes as something shifted inside her. A recognition that perhaps she'd been defining herself by this struggle for so long that she'd forgotten there could be more to her identity than resistance and survival. "No one sees my worth," she cried suddenly, the words breaking free from some deep, wounded place. "They see the land, or a woman alone, or someone to be pitied or possessed. But never me. Never what I'm capable of." Adam knelt before her, his blue eyes serious in the fading light. "I've seen nothing but your worth since we met," he said simply. "Your courage, your intelligence, the way you face each challenge without surrendering your compassion. That's why I love you, Penelope, not for this land or what you represent, but for who you are." The truth of his words washed over her like cleansing rain. For so long, she'd measured her value by her ability to hold on to her father's dream, as if letting go would mean failure not just as a homesteader, but as a daughter, as a woman, as a person. Adam was offering a different measure, one based on who she was, not what she possessed. "We'll still fight," she whispered. "But you're right. Whatever happens tomorrow, we'll face it together." The hearing the next day began ominously. Judge Morley, a stern man with suspicious eyes, examined the promissory note and frowned at Penelope's assertion of forgery. "Serious accusation, Miss Blackburn," he said. "Mr. Harland is a respected businessman in these parts. And my father was a respected man who kept meticulous records," Penelope replied steadily. "This loan appears nowhere in his accounts." The judge looked unconvinced until the town doctor unexpectedly spoke up from the crowd. "Your Honor, I attended Jeremiah Blackburn in his final weeks. By the date on that document, he couldn't have signed his name if his life depended on it." His hands shook too badly. Murmurs swept the room. Harlan's face darkened. Then the territorial marshal stood. "Judge, while investigating Miss Blackburn's claim, I found something interesting." He produced a ledger. "This is from Harlan's own bank. Shows he paid Thomas Reed $50 on the same day this promissory note is dated. Reed being the notary who verified the signature, and who left the territory rather suddenly last month." The evidence mounted as neighbors, emboldened by the turning tide, came forward with stories of Harlan's intimidation and fraud. By midday, Judge Morley not only dismissed the claim against Penelope's property, but ordered an investigation into Harlan's business dealings. Outside the courthouse, as Harlan was led away in handcuffs, spitting threats and promises of revenge, Adam pulled Penelope close. "Told you we'd win," he said, his smile lighting his eyes. "We didn't just win the land," she replied. "We won justice. For my father. For everyone Harlan has wronged." That evening, as they stood together on their porch, watching the first stars appear, Penelope felt a profound sense of peace settle over her. "I was thinking," she said, leaning into Adam's embrace, "the North pasture would be perfect for those Morgans you've been wanting to breed. Our own horse ranch." Adam's arms tightened around her. "Alongside your crops?" "Our crops," she corrected. "Our ranch. Our future. I like the sound of that." He turned her to face him. "But after tomorrow, it'll be official anyway." The wedding the next day was simple but joyful, the entire community gathering to celebrate. As Penelope and Adam spoke their vows beneath flowering apple trees in the churchyard, she realized the transformation within her was complete. The land was still precious, still worth fighting for, but it was no longer the sole measure of her worth or the only dream worth pursuing. 5 years later, Penelope sat on the same porch where she'd once questioned her value, watching Adam teaching their 3-year-old son to gentle a foal in the front yard. The homestead had flourished into a prosperous horse ranch, their reputation for quality stock spreading throughout the territory. "Careful, James," she called as the little boy, a miniature version of his father with her honey blonde hair, leaned too far over the fence. Adam scooped their son up, settling him securely on his shoulders. "Your mama's right," he told the boy. "Always respect horses and women who know their own minds." Penelope laughed, one hand resting on her swollen belly where their second child grew. As Adam carried their son toward her, his face alight with the same love and respect he'd shown from their first meeting, she thought about how far they'd come. The frontier was still hard, still demanded everything they had to give. But facing it together had transformed what once felt like mere survival into a life rich with purpose and joy. In Adam's eyes, she had found not just love, but recognition of her true worth, a worth that existed independently of land or circumstance, a worth that had always been there, waiting for the right person to see it. And in that recognition, Penelope had finally come home.